Hello, in today's video we're going to be looking at a mod you can do on your headphones to convert them to a balanced pair of headphones. I'm going to be using my AKG K240 studio headphones, but this will probably work on literally any set of headphones that have two ear cups. So there may be some slight differences in your headphones, but you could follow along, I'm sure. And if you've got any questions about your specific pair of headphones, stick them in a Discord server if you want to send photos, but otherwise you can stick comments in the section below. So what I've done is I've installed a XLR 4-port plug instead of the 3-port plug that comes on this usually. This is a nice to have for these headphones, but you could just fix the wire if you wanted to. And what I've ended up with is a new headphone cable that I've created with the right type of plug on one end and the 4.4 balanced jack input on the other end. As a bonus addition to that, I've managed to retrofit my old cable, which is the standard unbalanced, I've got the two ends, 3.5mm jack and the larger one, and I've retrofitted the plug on the end, and that's so that you can still use these with a unbalanced setup, or if you're using a balanced setup you can swap straight to this. So why might you want to use balanced audio on your headphones? So if your equipment supports it, or your DAC or your amplifier has a balanced output specifically for headphones, then this is perfect. What you end up with is two completely separate circuits for each head cup, so you should get the same amount of noise from each one, giving you a truly balanced setup. Whereas opposed to an unbalanced setup, you're sharing certain connections, and one ear cup could end up being louder or have slightly different noise profile to the other, giving you an unbalanced sound. What I'll do now is just show on the screen the difference in an unbalanced and a balanced circuit. I won't go into this in too much detail, but you can pause the video here if you want to have a look, sort of follow the traces round as they go in either of the circuits. Let's go straight on into the first part of the guide, which is making your new cable. As I say, I've added a plug on each end, but you could wire this directly to your headphones. But the most important part is the 4.4mm jack. Okay, to start with, we're gonna start putting together the 4.4mm jack, and all the parts you'll need, I'll put a link in the description to my website, and we'll do a little parts list. But you can start by just tinning all the points on the 4.4mm jack, and I will say it's very fiddly. These are very, very small and very, very fine, so just getting just a touch of solder on each point. Try not to put too much heat on it, melt the plastic in between. And once you've tinned both the connector and your piece of wire, we're just going to attach each one of them onto the connector pads. It doesn't matter what colours you use, just remember what goes where. The only thing you do need to do is use the shield and connect that to the outer, but we'll show you that in a minute. And for the whole of this project, I'll also put a link in the description to a good website which gave me the idea to do this in the first place. So that will be in the description section below. I'm sort of skipping ahead a little bit here just to show it gets very, very fiddly to get all of these connectors on at the end. And as you can see on the back here, here's the ground or the shield connector. So we're just going to connect the shield with this cable I've got just a braid, but if you've got any other type of braid on the outside of your cable, you can use that and connect that here. It's important to only connect this at one end, and this will just take away any electrical interference away from the cable. The cable I'm using here isn't particularly ideal. It's quite rigid, quite difficult to use, but yours might be better. It's not exactly pretty, I will say, but it does work. And we'll test that in a minute to make sure. So just put the cable gland over the top of it. It does just about fit. Try not to cross thread it as I go. And I did put a bit of heat shrink on over this connector in the end, just to give it a bit of a cable grip. So next I'm just going to strip the other end and just get out a multimeter. And you can either do this on beep test or you can do it on ohms as I'm doing here. I'm just going across all of the conductors to ensure that none of them are shorted together. So I should see OL between each of the conductors. And that proves to me that none of them are touching together. That means all my soldering joints are okay. If I got anything other than OL here when I'm doing this, then I would need to go back and resolder and make sure that there was no connections anywhere. And the next thing I'm doing is I'm touching each of the conductors, and then I'm going to each of the tips on the end of the 4.4mm jack. And this is to sort of prove that I've got a good connection going all the way through, and that the resistances I see on the meter are quite similar between all of them. So if there was a high number or higher in comparison to the others, then that would mean that I might have a bad joint. So that would also indicate I'd need to go back and resolder. Next, we're going to put together the other end of the cable. And as I said before, the colours don't necessarily matter. You just have to keep track of what you're doing. Just I'll show up the diagram here. So we're just going to keep track of what colours we're going to use for each of these: left, right, right, plus and minus, and ground. But it's probably best if you print that out or something similar and write down what you're doing. So these connectors, again, are extremely fiddly because they're very small. And again, this cable probably isn't the best for what I'm doing. But go through and solder all the conductors. Again, not the prettiest, but we'll test to make sure that everything is working. So just put the plastic guard sleeve over the top, and then you've got the shield gland, and that just bends over the top there. You can bend the little tabs down and then just wrap the wire around from the shield. Pull up the cable gland, and the face of the connector is keyed, so you just push it. It'll only go on one way, and then you can just roll up the holder. So that's your balanced cable complete, but we need to test that to make sure. So I just plug in the other end of the adapter, and then again I'm making sure that the shield is not connected to anything else here. So I'm getting OL, and then as before we're just going to go through each of the conductors and make sure that then in one position they're going through, and then but it's open circuit to all the rest of the conductors, because we don't want any shorts anywhere on this cable. if that's all good, we're going to move on to modifying the headphones themselves. And my headphones here, I've got a 3-pin connector, which we're obviously going to upgrade to a 4-pin connector to give us the availability. And on these headphones, your headphones might be completely different, but whichever way you do it, you're going to have to open up one side of the headphones to get to the conductors inside. And on these, we just remove this little sticker on the side here, which will show us the screws on the side. And there we go. So once inside, you can see the cables. The first thing I'm just going to do is straight away just unsolder that socket that's already in there, get that out of the way so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so yeah, as you can see, it's a 3-pin connector to start with, and we obviously want an extra conductor, so we're going to take that out, which I did get out in the end. Was a bit fiddly, but, and as I say, you don't have to put a mini XLR conductor like I have here. This is what I'm upgrading it to. You could wire it directly into the headphones, but I'm going to use this so I can swap between the two. It's just very similar, just got an extra conductor in the centre of the, and it fits exactly the same as the old one. Now in the back of the head cup, you've really got to imagine this as this conductor goes, these two, the white and the red, going through that hole there. They are the ones going to the ear cup closest, and the two, this red in my hand here and the other white, goes over to the other side of the ear cup. And you can see the two whites are joined together. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to cut where they're joined together. And then I just quickly extend this cable to make it a bit easier to work with. And I do that by just attaching a new bit of cable. I solder it on, and I'll stick a bit of heat shrink on it just to cover it up nicely. And so that's the old unbalanced design, is that the two grounds of the ear cups are both connected together. Whereas what we want to do now is have a balanced, so we have two separate grounds coming down our cable. One for each ear cup, and we can do that now. So now I end up with the yellow and the white are a pair that go to the closest ear cup, which I believe is the right, and then the red and white here, they go to the other side of the headphone. And what we need to do is we just need to marry up the colours that we've used with the 4.4mm jack. And remembering from the circuit diagram, the ground on this is not connected to anything in the headphone end. So depending on what colours you used for what numbers on the mini XLR, that's the numbers we're going to use to connect on the mini XLR plug socket. And so I'm just going to solder them, remembering to stick the wires through the the plastic shroud as I go, one at a time. And no surprise, this is also very fiddly. Slightly better job of soldering now. So as before, we'll just keep testing as we go through, and at this point I'm testing between left plus and minus and right plus and minus, and I want to see the resistance on the coils inside the speakers to be the same, which is about 50 ohms on this pair of headphones. And both sides should be similar, and again, if you saw a high resistance, you'd know that you've probably got a bad joint somewhere. Next, I'm just going to mix up some two-part epoxy. This is just to stick the keep the mini XLR plug in place, which is quite similar to how it was originally installed. Finally, this is a bit of a bonus really. So my original cable is now useless because we haven't got a plug socket for it to go into. So what we're going to do is, to give us the option of using unbalanced now, we're going to make this cable into a 4-pin mini XLR on the end of it. And the only difference is, instead of having the two neutrals connected in the headphones, we're just going to connect it in the 4-pin plug. So it'll be connected as it was before, but just in the plug instead of inside the headphone. And this just allows us to use either balanced or unbalanced with these headphones. So just strip everything back, remembering always to put the collar on first. And I'm just adding an extra bit of wire on here, and that's going to be our link that goes between the two neutrals. And so yeah, you should be linking between the left and the right neutral, and then your positive as normal, or your two positives as normal. And we'll just push everything together. Just tuck the joint bit of cable in the edge there. Just bite this down to give it a bit of strength. And again, these are keyed, so they'll only go on one way. And of course, with this cable as well, I'm going to be testing to make sure that all my connections are good. I won't show you that again. So just to sum up the video, so I've ended up with a decent pair of headphones with a XLR port on the side of it where I can switch quickly between my 4.4mm balanced audio with just a click. And then if I want to, I can swap straight back over to my older cable, or the original cable, just like that. So hopefully that's all worked out for you. If you've got any problems, as I say, stick them in our Discord or on the comments below. We'll try and help as much as we can. Other than that, thank you for your time, and hopefully you've liked it. So stick a like on the side of the video and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you in the next one. Thanks a lot.